This is Ryan Kaplan reporting for Yonkers Voice. I'm here today with Dr. Fred Hernandez, a mayoral candidate for Yonkers. Thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us in your busy schedule.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, so let's start off with just some of the key issues that you think are important in this Yonkers race.
I think one of the key issues is obviously the budgeting by crisis context that the mayor has used for the last 3 years, where the priorities and the vision and mission and the sense of his administration is only symbolic but nothing of substance. We can see clearly, if we analyze as a case study, the education agency of the city, which is the biggest agency, $500 million, 26,500 students, 3 unions, approximately 4,000 plus members, and obviously a nice representation of the city population in the sense of race, ethnicity, and languages. And if you see that context, if you look at that context, you can realize that unfortunately the mayor is not prepared, has not been prepared, and obviously does not have the capacity to lead the city.
So what are some of the issues that are related to education that are not being addressed currently? Now, you mentioned that the current mayor isn't prepared for certain situations and has sort of been doing things on the fly when it comes to the budget and things like that. But as far as education is concerned, what is what is currently lacking?
Yeah, but we need to understand any agency that you're going to manage as a mayor, you have to know governance, you have to know organization, you have to know accountability, you need to know assessment, you need to know supervision, you need to know valuation. And these things you have to study and learn in school. This is not you wing it, and try to figure it out, and that's obviously what you see. So we need to understand that you can look at any city agency and see those indicators where he has failed. Going back specifically to education, if we go back 2 years, we remember that the Board of Education under the former superintendent had 2 consecutive years of over expending the budget to the tune of $25 million each year for 2 years. Now, obviously on the city side, they were covering that expenditure, but no one said anything. Then going into the 3rd year, which is last school year, is where now they discover that there's an over expenditure of $50 million. So the question becomes, was this intentional or is this negligence? Because it's very difficult to understand how does one overspend $25 million, not 1 year, 2 years, and the city covers those expenditures and no one is concerned, only on the 3rd year. So once again, that's unacceptable. The taxpayers, and to this date, the mayor has not explained what happened there. But then moving forward, as a result of this, the mayor decides to run to Albany by himself with no collaboration with the state delegation of the Senator Stuart Cousins, Gary Pretlow, and also Shelley Mayer Assembly. And he doesn't collaborate with them, does not collaborate with the 3 unions, CSCA, YCA, Administrators, YFT. Does not collaborate with the Yonkers PTA of parents. So how is it possible? Intent or negligence? He runs to Albany, works out a deal with the Governor Cuomo, where he's going to give them $28 million as an incentive to consolidate the city and the school district, which at that time was independent, only appointed trustees by the mayor. So once again, you look at these decisions, once again, this situation at the Board of Ed, negligence or by intent. So he comes back down to the city, everyone's upset because now he wants to consolidate again with the promise that it's going to be a savings for the district and more money available to the Board of Ed. And just to end it, then all of a sudden we have March where the school district has to present a budget or prepare a budget, and then the big announcement, there's a $28 million gap because Cuomo only promised 1 year of one-shot budget allocation, and now we have to lay off 100,000 people. Budgeting by crisis once again.
So basically the 28 million was only for 1 year, and then the following year you're short for that amount.
Exactly. And there was no planning until the last moment, a reaction, once again, crisis by budgeting by crisis of announcement, we have to lay off 100,000, 100 employees.
Now you've mentioned that that the schools are lacking in certain areas in physical education, in art, in music, and those things are being cut. I mean, across the country in a lot of areas, those things are being cut. We're talking about a $25 million over budget, and we're still cutting those areas. How would you manage to, possibly bring those areas back? Where would the adjustment be in that $25 million? Because we want to obviously not go over budget, or we want to have a plan, but at the same point in time, how much more can we lose from the schools?
But once again, we have to evaluate, was this a man-made crisis, or was this negligence? The mayor to this date has not explained what happened, so we don't know what the facts are. And how do you tell unions that you don't have money, but then you claim to find $50 million somewhere of tax dollars, taxpayers' money, and you plug up these holes? So the question becomes, what is the true budget that the city has in the sense of the revenue that it brings in from the taxpayers? To this day, we're not sure. There's even an announcement that we're hearing, good sources, that he's ready to offer 2% to each of the unions to try to settle and get them out of participating in a responsible electoral process where people need to have a voice.
So you're basically looking for transparency and accountability, and is this something that you would be focusing on in your, in your administration?
Yes.
Within within the budget and all of those areas.
Sure. My 28 years, in the sense of my preparation, to manage budget, supervise personnel, create planning processes, with a collaborative, all the stakeholders, not symbolically like he says, but he keeps the parents and the teachers and the children out. When Cuomo came down 2 Sundays ago, we're talking about that. My preparation the last 28 years, I've been working with issues of governance, budget, prioritizing, assessment, evaluating, supervising personnel to make sure that we're meeting the goals and objectives. So we need to understand that has been my experience and my educational preparation, in the sense of Bachelor of Science from University of Connecticut, education, Master of Science, College of New Rochelle, and a doctorate in education from Teachers College, Columbia University. So you can see that I've been an individual that has invested in my career. Just because you have a license to drive a car doesn't mean you can pilot a 747 jet commercial liner. It doesn't work that way. The mayor, I understand, and to his credit, I guess, has a equivalency diploma, and that's the extent of his professional educational experience. That's why the issue of having a license to drive a car doesn't mean you're qualified to navigate a 747 jetliner.
Okay. And now, so related to the school system and the money, you've talked about the unions and issues there. How do you see the unions factoring into everything, into the race, and how you would handle?
Right now, you can see that the teachers union, the YFT, the CSEA Civil Service Union, and the YCA Yonkers Council Administrators, they've been very patient and very cooperative. You have not heard any one of those unions chanting about increase of salary. They're just trying to create better working conditions and better student learning conditions. That's why the $89 million that the Hispanic Yonkers Coalition from the very beginning was stating that is the goal, not the 28 million that saves the jobs. That's important. Those are working conditions of getting the workers to work, but it doesn't improve the working conditions and the student learning conditions. The union's been very supportive. I think they've been disrespected by the mayor. The mayor continues to say there's no money for increases, but also, once again, this budgeting by crisis, all of a sudden, he finds money. Where's the money coming from? Why all of a sudden? Because he's being challenged. Now we're hearing that he's going to offer 2%. Well, why can't we have that conversation with respect, good collective bargaining at the table about increases, about working conditions, and about student learning conditions? What's so difficult? Only if you have not been prepared to understand how to handle these situations do you create this chaos that we've been having for the last 3 years.
Right. Okay. So now you, so you've mentioned, there's more to being the mayor than dealing just with the educational aspect of things. But you did mention something about businesses being able to be a part of education. So that was interesting to me. So what do you mean in regards to that, businesses being a part of the education process?
What we're talking about, that if you're going to develop an economic plan, you need to make sure that you have the representation of the Chamber of Commerce leaders at the table to look at the commercial landscape. What is it that we need in Yonkers? One thing that we're becoming under Mayor Spano is the capital of restaurants for Westchester County. The only jobs and businesses he's bringing in with great numbers, which is low paying, below wage salaries, are restaurants. There's no benefits for our students and our families to go into working in restaurants. We need to understand that currently there's a national movement from the federal government down called Career Technical Education, which means that we're realizing that all of our high schools have to have pathways that lead our students into technical careers, entry level and career ladders. You can develop an economic plan where you bring those type of businesses that align themselves with those themes and those career paths that right now are being funded with the federal government, because the federal government is moving in that direction. So there's got to be an alignment between the economic development and businesses you're bringing to the city and creating opportunities for our students, so when they graduate out of high school, they can go into good paying union or career ladder jobs that lead up the scale, or they can continue with higher education. Right now, you don't see the Chamber of Commerce saying anything about the economic development. You don't even see the Chamber of Commerce representatives participating in cutting the ribbon. So I'm saying, once again, there's exclusion of only his vision is about the few. Use the resources for the few. I'm saying use all the resources for all the people and all the stakeholders, which they all deserve respect.
All right, so bringing in other businesses other than simply restaurants, which again doesn't do much to build the community. Do you have any specific businesses that you would be considering, types of businesses?
It's all, once again, it's all aligned to the career technical education, which goes into obviously the medical professions. There's a lot of careers in the medical professions, and if you look at a lot of the data, that's an area that we need to move, and our curriculum needs to kind of give students a good orientation about the medical profession, because there's a lot of careers booming there. Why? Because we're living longer. So obviously there's a lot of more people that need care at different stages of their lives. We're also talking about the biotechnology. We're talking about the environment. Look at the great, mighty Hudson River that we have there. So much opportunity. We have a community-based organization called BZAC that provides environmental studies. Those are careers, once again, pathways that there's money being poured down into the Yonkers Public Schools, but there's no coordination, no alignment in those areas. The same thing with robotics. Once again, there's a lot of, and we had a high school, Saunders High School, that had a robotic team that went into the national and international ranks and competed. But that's only one high school. What about the other 5 high schools? We need to expand and give opportunity for all the students to be able to go to all the high schools that provide that focus, not just one high school, which is right now Saunders Trade and Career Technical High School.
So this seems to be long-term planning ahead that you're looking
No,
for.
well, I mean, really, right now we have a person, Susan Neighbor. She's a principal. She used to be executive director, and she's been doing an excellent job of bringing millions of dollars into the district. The issue is being able to supervise the implementation and the development of those programs and making sure it goes to all the high schools and not just 1 or 2. The other aspect, in the sense of why I'm running for mayor, is that we need to understand that local government needs to create a participatory model where the responsibility of government and government workers is to engage neighborhood leaders and the neighborhood and finding the solution. Safety and security is not the responsibility only of the police department. It has to be the police department working with the community and the community leaders to discuss the local concerns that exist in neighborhoods. And having a process where you really want to sit down, not for media event, but to really solve problems, that indicates to the community that this is a government that really cares. So this concept of engaging workers, and it starts from the top. You create a vision that public service matters, and you create a culture where employees of city government feel proud to be public servants. That then is going to exhibit itself in the communication with the community. When was the last time Mayor Spano announced any assessment or evaluation of the workforce or any department? The Dr. Hernandez administration, using the technology, will have a mechanism where every 3 months the citizens can go on the website and do an assessment of all city agencies, a Likert scale of 1 to 5. Very satisfied, not satisfied, and everything in between. Every 3 months, all the citizens and residents can get, and it's time to evaluate government. Let's evaluate each agency, how satisfied you are with what we're doing. Obviously, Mayor Spano doesn't understand that, because for you to understand assessment, evaluation, supervision, and developing a culture, you need to get higher education. You don't get that at the high school level. You got to go beyond that to understand and read the books. Everything I'm talking about, I've studied and I've read about. So these are things that are available. But once again, what vision do you have for the city of Yonkers? And then what is the mission? How are you going to use the budget and the workforce to move, and the community, engage the community to accomplish those goals?
So that seems very appropriate, considering the climate that we have today with the police interaction and the interaction of regular people, civilians, and how there is a disconnect. It seems, or at least that's what we see a lot of in the media and in our interactions, that there is some sort of a disconnect. Do you think this would improve that? How do you think this would work with that?
Without a doubt. It's basically the government responsibility to demonstrate to the tax-paying residents that you really care about the service and you're proud about the service you want to deliver. We need to understand, and a good example, the policing can't be the same model for all the neighborhoods. In some neighborhoods, you have to take the police out of their cars and they have to walk the neighborhoods to get to meet the community leaders, to get to meet the youth. One department he doesn't have, he has a youth advisory group, which is a group of students that participate in discussions. How could you not have a department of youth development coming at a city hall where you're looking at the dropout rate, you're looking at those students that are not engaged and you have someone there to collaborate with community-based organizations, help them learn how to write proposals for federal, state, and local grants to re-engage that youth back into education, back into trades. Career and technical education doesn't have to occur only in the public schools. Community-based organizations, you can help them get some of those grants and partnership with the city. So you can help the community-based organizations get a level of sophistication where they're really engaging our youth with, purpose, not with midnight basketball. Under Dr. Hernandez, there's no such thing as midnight basketball. At midnight, everyone needs to be home. Students, adults, and families need to be resting so they can go to school and work.
So how do you think the police are doing currently in Yonkers?
I think, once again, the commissioners and the city workforce, it's just a reflection of lack of leadership. I'm sure they're doing their best, but if they don't have a leader that can motivate them and bring them to the table, all the commissioners, on how do we work together to make a better city, a city where the government is giving service, real service, not lip service.
And being as the city is growing, the crime rate also tends to increase. How are we addressing that with the police force? How would you address that in what way?
Well, like I said before, having weekly meetings with the commissioners where you're looking at the data that's being generated, that every police officer and every city employees knows that when you provide that service, if you see that a neighborhood is not cooperating, you need to report that to your supervisors, because those supervisors need to touch base with the leaders of that neighborhood and say, we need to have a meeting. We're doing our work. We have the workforce over there providing the service, and we're not getting the cooperation. And these are the reasons why. And we need to help the leaders understand that we need to sit at the table and find the solution.
You mentioned a way of tracking the data. Is there any sort of cost associated with that, and how do we absorb that?
No, I think it's really about retraining the workforce and giving them the tools they need, the technology that's available where they can just capture, the issues. I work for DBW, let's say. I always come to this neighborhood and they're always dumping things. They're not following the recycling dates. Well, that needs to be reported to the supervisor, so a notice can go out to that particular block of neighborhood and let them know that, listen, if we know we don't continue to follow these procedures, there's going to be summonses. But you send out notices, you set up a community forum with that neighborhood to talk about what's going on. That's a responsibility of local government. We can't say, well, it's just those people, that's just the way it is. That's unacceptable.
So now, you mentioned before the cutting of the ribbons, and I've seen that somewhere else where you had said that there's been ribbon cuttings and things of that nature, but these are all projects that have been there initiated previously by the previous mayor, not by the current mayor. What projects would you initiate, and that you would be there for the ribbon cutting and that sort of thing?
Well, I expect to be cutting the ribbon for Boyce Thompson, which is the one he's just started, which I'm going to cut the ribbon for when I'm elected the mayor of Yonkers. So we can put that on the record that I'll be cutting that ribbon. But once again, it's about planning. It's about really involving. Why do we have Chamber of Commerce? What is their role, if not to be part of a process with city government to look at the landscape? Do you really think that Red Robin's and Executive Boulevard really needs another restaurant across, a couple of yards? Do you think that's good economic planning? That side of Executive Boulevard at Red Robin's, that's turned over like every 2 or 3 years. There's a new company in there. So you think, using the concept of Boyce Thompson and bringing another restaurant just across the street, is that good economic planning? Ask any Chamber of Commerce participant, and they're going to tell you that's the problem, that we don't plan and we just put businesses wherever we have a vacant lot, and there's not a study of what impact that's going to have with the current merchants that have invested in the city and obviously bringing new ones. Another thing that's important about the economic development, how many companies have benefited from some kind of tax exemption, some subsidy from the people's money to help with development? What kind of incentives are being offered on behalf of the citizens by the mayor to these companies? And what is the dollar amount? And how do we get that back into the city? How are those companies that were giving subsidies and tax exemptions to get them started? How do we get them to invest back in our public schools?
So it's accountability.
And once again, it's accountability. There has to be transparency and there has to be fiscal integrity, bringing it all on the table and giving respect to all the stakeholders.
Now, some people would say that's just the price of politics. That's the way it works. You have to play these games. You have to keep information. You have to make these deals behind closed doors and things of that nature. How do you feel about that?
I think people say that because they don't believe in city government that's really committed to providing service. If you can't be transparent, then there's something wrong. The deal's not a good deal. If you can't go public and you can't say, listen, citizens, for this venture to take place, the incentives that we have to provide are X, Y, and Z. You have to let the people know if you cannot do that, there's something wrong with the deal. And that's why, unfortunately, in the city of Hills, we've had politicians that unfortunately have been arrested and will be arrested because of those kind of practices. If you can't do it in public, there's something wrong with the deal.
And now you mentioned family and friends network, that phrase that you had mentioned in relation to politics. What is it? What did you mean by it?
Well, when you don't have a vision in the sense that includes all the stakeholders and you're not really committed to that principle, what you look for is convenience. And what convenience does, it creates a situation where you feel you don't have time to really vet out employees and really find the best qualified individuals that you need to lead. And then the convenience is that then you wind up, picking your friends and sometimes family members. So you create a culture that's really relaxed and not one that feels the urgency that the citizens have about good service and about accountability. So that's what I mean, when you're not really committed and you don't have the vision to understand how government for the people, by the people works. We don't, that's not about reading it in a social studies book. That we can live by. We have pockets of that, of neighborhoods in the city of Yonkers where they work and collaborate under that spirit of being honest, of being transparent. So why can't the local government operate with those principles?
As far as I know, this is your first foray into officially being in politics, correct?
Correct.
But you do have a lot of experience that you feel lends itself to this arena.
Sure. I mean, politics is basically about symbols and it's supposed to be about substance. Unfortunately, some leaders that are not prepared just stay on the symbol aspect of politics. And politics is basically, who are you as a leader? What do you represent? What are your values? What are your morals? And who's supporting you? The momentum that got me to jump into this candidacy was basically all the teachers, all the parents, all the merchants, all the business sector people that came up to me, the CSEA, the unions, and said, something, Dr. Hernandez, you should run for office because you've been 28 years of public service, integrity, sincere, commitment, fair. Right now I'm the superintendent's hearing officer, which let's say is the judge of the student court. And you will see that no one will say that they came before me and that they were not respected. And the bottom line was, how can we fix it? How can we help you not repeat the same mistake, and how can we help you move forward so you can be successful? So my experience working with parents, with unions, with students, with the business sector as advisory boards, over 28 years, and the planning, the organization, the evaluation, supervision of staff, the assessments, all basically prepared me and got me to where I'm at now. There's schools that I took off the low performing New York State Education low performing list. There's people that do not understand how these schools operate. And even the two schools that were closed down, which was Commerce Middle School and School 13. If you look at the data of those schools were low performing schools. And before they closed them down, Commerce Middle School, the eighth graders there was second to none in the district in the ELA state assessment. But people don't look at that fact. School 13, which was my last assignment, when they closed that school down, our math scores for that building exceeded the district average. So even those schools that they decided to close down because there's availability of money that says you can get this money, but you have to pull out the administration. And that basically is a bad practice. Because the reality of the matter, and it still continues, that the government, state government says, school district, in order for you to get $3 million to improve the school, you have to move out the administrator. So in the sense, when those schools were closed and the administration was changed, it wasn't a reflection of my leadership. It was a reflection of the school district leadership and their failure to assign students to schools that basically can work together and that are at different levels. You cannot assign all high poverty students to one school. You cannot assign special education students to that same school, and you cannot assign English language learners into the same school and then be surprised that it's low performing. But in spite of those decisions that prior administrations have done in Commerce Middle School and School 13, I was able, when they closed those buildings down, the record is there. Commerce Middle School 8th graders achieved the ELA, second to none in the district, and the students at School 13 math scores exceeded the district average, which means those two buildings should have not been closed.
So now, so you're saying they were closed maybe for financial reasons and for budgeting reasons? And
Well, yeah, I mean, it's once again, it's all politics. I'm a person that even within the context of the Yonkers Public Schools, I've had about 15 assignments because I speak up. Mm-hmm. I provide a voice to the voiceless, and I always get rewarded by getting a harder assignment. So if you hear that my assignment has changed, it's because that's their way of, quote, rewarding me for being an advocate and for stepping up and letting people know, don't give up hope. Your vote matters. What matters in this election is that you come out and use the power of the vote and say enough is enough.
So what do you want everyone to know about you in specific? If there was one thing that you want everyone to know about you or your vision for Yonkers.
Well, basically,
we covered a lot of things.
There's, I've walked throughout the city, all quadrants of the city. I socialize as a principal, as a community person, as a resident. And one thing I'm convinced about the city of Yonkers, you have a majority, supermajority of law-abiding, good people with good values that unfortunately have not had good local government. And I think that's what has affected that about 80% of the citizens of Yonkers or voters do not participate. And that's convenient for those that don't have vision or mission, but just want convenience. And we need to bring back those voters that, yes, your vote counts. You have an option. You have a person that, once again, has a driver's license to drive a car, but is trying to navigate a 747 jetliner.
So now,
And you have a candidate that has your preparation to drive the car and also navigate and fly the 747. And that metaphor, obviously, we're talking about the city government of Yonkers.
so now with getting voters more involved, if you weren't running, who else would be running against the Mayor Spano?
Well, apparently, it appears no one.
So that's not much of a choice for.
Well, that says the state of affairs in the sense of how the residents, citizens, and voters of Yonkers have felt the last 3 years. That's a sorry statement. No mayor can feel proud to be a mayor of a city where 80% of the people do not vote. No one should be proud of that record. I will be proud of a record. Whatever the turnout, I respect the voters. That there is an excitement, there's hope, there's an enthusiasm that now the citizens of Yonkers, the residents, have a choice. And Dr. Hernandez, for mayor, they have a candidate that's prepared, that has the conviction, is committed. I'm not a career politician. I'm an educator. I understand politics. I understand the politics and for the people, by the people.
And so, Dr. Hernandez, how are you planning to reach the people, the young voters and the parents, and to get them, how are you planning on getting them enthusiastic about Yonkers and being a part of this vision and being a part in having a voice and having a say in their next mayor?
Well, obviously, we're going to be using all social media. I thank Yonkers Voice for this opportunity. You have a big audience, a smart, intelligent audience that likes to stay informed. So I thank you for this opportunity. But all types of social media that we know is very engaging and very rapid and fast in the sense of information. We're going to use that to reach all sectors of the residents of Yonkers. And anyone interested in supporting Dr. Hernandez for mayor of Yonkers, you can call 914-570-4338. Once again, 914-570-4338 to use your power to have me as a candidate for the Democratic primary on September 10th. We need you to sign our petition, and we need you also to donate so we can cover the cost of this campaign. And I thank you greatly.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hernandez. Thank you for joining us here. On behalf of Yonkers Voice, I'd like to say thanks and good luck.
Thank you.